I knew I was in trouble the night she asked me to stay. It was past 9. The office lights were mostly off, just a few strips still glowing over the executive floor. I was in my cubicle finishing a quarterly report that could have waited until morning. I did not have anywhere to be. That had become a pattern since my divorce 2 years earlier. I stayed late. I went home to a quiet apartment in downtown Chicago. Heated something from a box. Watched something I did not care about. Slept on one side of the bed. I was 38. Senior operations analyst at a tech consulting firm. Steady job. Good benefits. No drama. People described me as reliable. No one described me as exciting. She was 52. Claire Morgan. Founder and CEO. The kind of woman people either admired or felt threatened by. Sharp suits. Controlled voice. The room shifted when she walked into it. That night, I went upstairs because her assistant had emailed me. Claire needed revised projections before the morning board call. Urgent. Her office door was half open. I knocked lightly. She was standing by the window, city lights behind her. Jacket off. Sleeves rolled up. Her hair was slightly out of place, which I had never seen before. She looked tired. Not weak. Just human. You're still here, she said without turning around. Yeah. I can finish the revisions now. She nodded. Close the door. I did. There was a pause that felt longer than it should have. The air in the room was warmer than the hallway. Or maybe that was just me. I walked her through the numbers. Revenue adjustments. Vendor cost shifts. She stood close, closer than she needed to. I could smell her perfume, something subtle clean. When I pointed at the screen, her arm brushed mine. Neither of us moved away. Everyone thinks I don't need anyone, she said suddenly, still looking at the monitor. That I built this place alone. I did not know if that was a question. You built most of it, I said carefully. She gave a short laugh. Most isn't all. Then she turned toward me. Really looked at me. You're different from the others, she said. I felt stupidly proud. How? You don't try to impress me. I shrugged. I just do my job. That's exactly what I mean. There was something in her eyes I had not seen before. Not authority. Not calculation. Something softer. Or maybe I imagined it because I wanted to. A week earlier, I had seen her in the boardroom after a meeting. One of the investors, a man maybe 10 years younger than her, had joked loudly that the company needed younger energy at the top. People had laughed. Lightly. Politely. Claire had smiled, tight and composed. But I had seen her hands clench under the table. That moment stayed with me. The way she absorbed it. The way no one defended her. I had done nothing then. Tonight felt different. She stepped closer. Close enough that I could feel the heat from her skin through my shirt. Her hand rested briefly on my forearm. It could have been casual. It did not feel casual. Stay, she said quietly. After we finish. I should have asked what she meant. I did not. We finished the projections in silence. The work part was easy. Numbers always were. People were harder. When I closed my laptop, the office felt smaller. She walked around her desk and stopped in front of me. No desk between us now. No screen. Just the faint hum of the building after hours. You ever get tired of being the dependable one? She asked. I thought about my ex-wife calling me predictable. Safe. Like that was an insult. Sometimes, I said. Her fingers moved from my forearm to my wrist. Slow. Testing. I get tired of being the strong one, she said. There was a crack in her voice. Barely there. If I had not been standing inches away, I might have missed it. I told myself I was staying because she needed someone. Because I understood loneliness. Because I knew what it felt like to sit in a quiet apartment and wonder if anyone actually saw you. That is what I told myself. She leaned in first. Not a dramatic move. Just a shift forward until her forehead almost touched my chest. My hands hovered awkwardly at my sides before settling lightly on her waist. It felt unreal. Like I was stepping into someone else's life. This doesn't leave this room, she murmured. I nodded. When she kissed me, it was not rushed. It was deliberate. Controlled. Like everything else she did. But there was urgency underneath it, something held back for too long. I remember the way her hand slid up to the back of my neck. The way she exhaled against my mouth. The way the city lights flickered behind her like we were inside a secret. I should have stopped it. She was my CEO. This was complicated. Risky. Probably stupid. But in that moment, it did not feel like strategy or power or imbalance. It felt like being chosen. Later, when I stepped out into the elevator alone, my tie slightly crooked, my mind was racing. I told myself it meant something. That she saw me. Not just as an employee. Not just as a body in a chair running numbers. I went home that night and did not turn on the TV. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the way she had looked at me. The way she had said I was different. I did not yet understand that sometimes being different just means being convenient. But I would. The next morning, I almost convinced myself it had not happened. I got to the office earlier than usual. I told myself it was to get ahead on emails. Really, I did not know how to walk in at 9 like everything was normal. My desk looked the same. Same stack of files. Same chipped coffee mug. Same view of the gray building across the street. For a minute, I felt stupid for thinking anything in my life could change in one night. At 8:47, my phone buzzed. Claire asterisk. Come up when you get in. No emoji. No explanation. I sat there for a full minute before standing. My palms were damp, which annoyed me. I am not usually the nervous type. I deal with contracts worth millions without blinking. But this felt different. Personal. Fragile. Her door was closed this time. I knocked. Come in. She was behind her desk again. Jacket back on. Hair perfect. CEO mode fully restored. If someone had walked in, they would have seen nothing unusual. Morning, I said carefully. Morning. Her tone was even. Professional. For half a second, I wondered if I had imagined everything. She gestured to the chair in front of her desk. I sat. I've been thinking, she said, folding her hands. Last night was unexpected. I waited. We need to be clear about something. Her eyes held mine. Steady. At work, nothing changes. You report to me the same way you always have. No favoritism. No special treatment. Of course, I said quickly. I did not want her thinking I expected anything. And outside of work, she added softer now, we take this slow. That word, slow, felt reassuring. I'm not looking for drama, she said. I don't have the energy for it. Neither do I. A faint smile touched her mouth. Not the public one. The smaller one I had seen only up close. Good. There was a pause. Not uncomfortable. Just charged. Why me? I asked before I could stop myself. She tilted her head slightly. That's a dangerous question. I'm serious. She studied me for a moment. You listen. Most men my age are busy proving something. You don't seem to need that. It sounded like a compliment. I took it as one. I'm not trying to prove anything, I said. I just show up. Yes, she said quietly. You do. That word again. Different. Steady. Reliable. I left her office feeling lighter. For the rest of the week, nothing obvious changed. In meetings, she was sharp, decisive. I was the same quiet analyst presenting data. If anyone noticed a shift, they did not show it. But small things started happening. A text at 10:12 p.m. Still awake? A reply from me within seconds. Yeah. Then. Come by. Her condo was 15 minutes from my apartment. High rise. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Clean lines. Minimal furniture. Everything intentional. The first time I went there, I stood in the doorway unsure where to put my hands. She was barefoot. Hair down. No blazer. Just a soft sweater and jeans. You look nervous, she said. I am. She stepped close, reached for my tie, and loosened it slowly. Not rushed. Just deliberate. Her fingers brushed my collarbone. My breath caught before I could hide it. You don't have to be, she murmured. That night, we moved carefully. Slow touches. Long pauses. The kind of closeness that feels both new and familiar at the same time. Her hand tracing my shoulder. Mine resting at her waist. The space between us disappearing inch by inch. It was intense, yes. Physical. But also quiet. Like we were both afraid to break something fragile. Afterward, she lay beside me staring at the ceiling. "You can't tell anyone," she said softly. "I won't. I mean it. I know." She turned onto her side, studying my face. "You understand this doesn't complicate work?" "Of course." She nodded, satisfied. I thought that was her protecting both of us. 2 weeks later, we had our first real conversation. Not about numbers. Not about schedules. It was late again. We were sitting on her couch, glasses of wine untouched on the table. "Do you ever think about how people look at you?" she asked. "In what way?" "As if you've already peaked." She gave a short laugh. "As if you should be grateful anyone still finds you relevant." I thought about the investor in the boardroom. The joke about younger energy. "I saw what he said," I admitted. Her jaw tightened slightly. "They think I don't hear it. You deserve better than that." She looked at me like I had said something unexpected. "You're kind," she said. "I'm just honest." She shifted closer, her knee brushing mine. "I built this company from a folding table in my kitchen," she said. "And somehow I still end up defending my right to lead it. I don't see someone past her prime," I said quietly. "I see someone at the top of her game." Her hand slid over mine. Warm. Firm. "Careful," she murmured. "You're starting to sound like you care." "I do." The words slipped out before I could weigh it. Something changed in her expression. Not withdrawal. Not exactly. More like calculation. "That's not part of the agreement," she said gently. "What agreement?" "This is uncomplicated. That's why it works." I frowned slightly. "It doesn't feel uncomplicated." She squeezed my hand once, then let go. "It has to be." I told myself she was protecting us again. Protecting her position. Her reputation. Maybe even me. Over the next month, a pattern formed. She would call. I would come over. We would talk for a while. Then we would end up tangled together in her sheets, the city lights flickering beyond the glass. In the office, she barely looked at me. At first, I admired that control. I thought it showed strength. But there were moments that unsettled me. Once, after we had spent the night together, I reached for her hand in the kitchen while she was making coffee. She stepped back slightly. Just enough to create space. "Not here," she said. "It's just us." She shook her head. "Walls have ears." Another time, I asked if she wanted to grab dinner somewhere public. She paused too long before answering. "That's not a good idea." "Why?" "Because people talk." "We're not doing anything wrong." Her expression softened, but her voice stayed firm. "You're an employee. I'm the CEO. It's different." I nodded, even though something inside me tightened. One night, lying beside her, I traced a slow line along her shoulder. "Where do you see this going?" I asked. She did not answer right away. "Why does it have to go anywhere?" she said finally. "Because it means something to me." Silence. She rolled onto her back, staring at the ceiling again. "It's been a long time since I've allowed myself to want anything physical," she said quietly. "You make that easy." Physical. The word landed heavier than she intended. "And the rest?" I asked. She turned her head slightly toward me. "Don't complicate this," she whispered. I lay awake long after she fell asleep. I had started this thinking I was stepping into something rare. Something meaningful. A connection between two lonely people who saw each other. But as the weeks passed, I began to notice the pattern. She reached for me when she wanted comfort. When she wanted distraction. When she wanted to forget the way the board questioned her, or the investors doubted her. I showed up every time. And somewhere between her fingers in my collar, and the way she said my name in the dark, I had convinced myself she was choosing me. I just wasn't sure anymore what she was choosing me for. 2 weeks after that first night at her condo, I stopped pretending this was casual. It did not feel casual when she texted at midnight, and I was already halfway dressed before replying. It did not feel casual when I started checking my phone during meetings, waiting for her name to light up the screen. It did not feel casual when I knew the rhythm of her breathing better than I knew the sound of my own apartment. But in the office, we were strangers. By early November, the weather in Chicago had turned sharp and gray. People rushed in and out of the building with coats pulled tight. Inside, the heating hummed and everyone complained about year-end targets. She walked past my desk one morning without looking at me. Not cold. Not unkind. Just neutral. An hour later, I got a message. Claire asterisk. Come tonight. 9. That was it. I told myself that was enough. At first, it felt intoxicating. The secrecy. The way she would open her door already knowing I was there. The way her hands would slide over my shoulders like she had been waiting all day. The urgency in her kiss before we even made it fully inside. There were nights she barely spoke before pulling me close. Her fingers gripping my shirt, her mouth at my neck, her breath unsteady. It was intense. Physical. Almost desperate. In those moments, I felt needed. Afterward, though, she would often pull away slightly. Not physically far. Just emotionally quieter. One night, I stayed awake while she slept. The city lights washed her face in pale blue. I brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. She stirred, then opened her eyes. What are you thinking? She asked. About you. A faint smile. Dangerous habit. I don't think it is. She propped herself up on one elbow, studying me. You're starting to blur lines, she said softly. I thought we already did. She shook her head. There's a difference between chemistry and attachment. The words stung more than I expected. I'm not a teenager, I said, keeping my voice even. I know the difference. Do you? She asked. That was the first time I felt something shift. 2 weeks later, we had our first real crisis at work. A major client threatened to pull out over a miscalculated projection. It was my department's model. Not a huge error, but enough to cause panic. The board demanded an emergency review. We ended up in the conference room together until nearly midnight. Just the two of us and a stack of spreadsheets. This version of her was different. Focused. Sharp. Calm under pressure. You see the flaw? She asked, leaning over my laptop. Yeah. The vendor assumption was too optimistic. Can you fix it by morning? I can try. She looked at me, not as someone she called at night, but as a professional. Not try, she said quietly. Do it. Something about the way she said that grounded me. We worked side by side for hours. Coffee going cold. Jackets thrown over chairs. Our shoulders brushing occasionally, but neither of us acknowledging it. At one point, she stood behind me, reading the screen. Her hand rested lightly on my back. Not sensual. Steady. You're good at this, she said. You hired me. I did. When we finally sent the revised model at 2:17 a.m., the tension in the room eased. She exhaled slowly and sat back in her chair. Thank you, she said. It felt different from the late-night thank yous in her bedroom. This one felt earned. The next morning, the client accepted the revisions. The board calmed down. Crisis averted. In the hallway outside the executive suite, she stopped me. You handled that well, she said. I'm recommending you lead the new analytics division next quarter. I blinked. Really? You deserve it. For a second I felt proud. Not because of us. Because of me. Then she stepped closer, lowering her voice. Come by tonight, she added. And just like that, the lines blurred again. By December, our pattern was solid. She called. I came. We would sit on her couch first, talking about work, about investors, about how exhausting it was to constantly prove herself. Sometimes she would vent about comments she overheard. Jokes about her age. Questions about succession plans. They're already planning for my replacement, she said one evening, wine glass balanced in her hand. Like I'm fading. You're not fading, I said. She looked at me with that mix of gratitude and something harder to read. You make me feel visible, she admitted. That word hooked into me. Visible. When she leaned in to kiss me that night, I felt more than just desire. I felt chosen again. But slowly, I began noticing something else. If I texted her first during the day, the replies were short. If I suggested dinner out, she redirected. If I asked about meeting friends, she changed the subject. One Saturday I asked, Do you ever want more than this? She was sitting at her kitchen island, scrolling through emails even though it was the weekend. More how? Something that exists outside your apartment. She set the phone down carefully. You knew what this was. I thought I did. And now? Now I'm not sure. She stood, walked over to me, and placed her hands on my chest. You're important to me, she said. How? Her fingers tightened slightly in my shirt. Your comfort. You're calm. When everything feels like a fight, you're not. It sounded sincere. But it also sounded incomplete. By the time January arrived, snow piling up along the sidewalks, I realized something uncomfortable. I was rearranging my life around her availability. Skipping plans? Ignoring invitations. Waiting. She, on the other hand, moved through her world unchanged. Public. Polished. Untouchable. One night, after we had been together for hours, she lay with her head on my shoulder. You don't ask for much, she murmured. Should I? A pause. Most men would. I'm not most men. She smiled faintly. I know. I stared at the ceiling, the same way I had the first night. Somewhere along the way, I had stopped being just a steady analyst who showed up and did his job. I had become the man she called when she wanted to forget her loneliness. The man who filled the quiet. The man who made her feel wanted. And I had convinced myself that meant I mattered in the same way she mattered to me. But lying there in the dark, listening to her breathing even out, I started to wonder if I was building something real. Or if I was just very good at being available. I realized I loved her on a night that had nothing to do with her bed. It was late January. Snow pressed against the windows of the office, thick and heavy. We were in the conference room again, not because she called me over, but because the board had scheduled an emergency session. Rumors about restructuring were spreading. Someone had leaked internal numbers. Investors were restless. One of them, the same man who had joked months earlier about younger energy, leaned back in his chair and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, at some point we have to ask whether this company needs a fresh face at the top. The room went quiet. Claire did not flinch. She never did. She folded her hands neatly on the table. Are you suggesting I'm incapable? She asked calmly. I'm suggesting markets respond to innovation, he said with a smile that wasn't really a smile. And sometimes innovation looks younger. A few people shifted uncomfortably. No one said anything. I felt heat rise in my chest. I do not usually speak in board meetings. I present data when asked. I keep my head down. But that night, something in me snapped. With respect, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The last 3 product pivots were her decisions. The analytics expansion was her initiative. The client retention we're seeing right now is because she refused to follow short-term panic. All eyes turned toward me. She's the reason we're still profitable, I added. Not in spite of her leadership. Because of it. The investor looked irritated. And you are? Head of analytics, I said. Promoted by her. Evaluated by performance metrics, not by how I look in a press photo. Silence. Claire did not look at me. Not then. But I could feel the shift in the room. The discomfort. The recalibration. The meeting moved on. Later, in the hallway outside the boardroom, she stopped walking. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. You put yourself in their line of fire. I don't care. She finally looked at me. Really looked. You should, she said. Your career matters. So do you. There it was. No bed. No dim lights. No distraction. Just truth sitting between us in a sterile hallway. She inhaled slowly. Don't. I'm in love with you. The words surprised even me in how simple they sounded. No speech. No drama. Just fact. Her face changed. Not shock exactly. Not anger. Something closer to fear. This is exactly what I was trying to prevent, she whispered. Why? Because this complicates everything. It already is complicated. She turned away for a second, then back again. Composed but shaken underneath. You think you love me, she said. But what you love is the intensity. The secrecy. The idea of me. I love the woman who built a company from nothing. The woman who pretends she doesn't hear the jokes. The woman who texts me at midnight because she's tired of being strong. Her jaw tightened. And I love the way you soften when no one else is watching, I added. That's not intensity. That's you? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You don't understand the risk. Then explain it. If this becomes public, they will say you slept your way into promotions. They will say I'm reckless. That I can't separate personal and professional. They will not question you the way they question me. They will question me. I don't care what they say. I do. Her honesty landed heavy. For a moment, I thought she would walk away. Instead, she reached up and cupped my face. Her hand was warm, steady. I care about you, she said softly. More than I planned to. Then don't push me away. Her eyes searched mine, like she was measuring consequences. I never meant for this to be more than physical, she admitted. It was supposed to be uncomplicated. A release. A reminder that I could still feel wanted. The word physical echoed in my chest again. But somewhere along the way, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, you became the one person I can't lie to. That's not a bad thing. It's terrifying. Good, I said gently. That means it matters. A long silence passed between us. Then she did something I did not expect. She kissed me. Not the urgent, late-night kind. Not the desperate kind. Slow. Careful. Almost trembling. When she pulled back, her forehead rested lightly against mine. I'm in love with you too, she said. It sounded like surrender. For a second, everything felt light. Like we had finally stepped into something honest. Then reality settled in. We can't keep pretending this doesn't affect work, she said. We need to handle it properly. I agree. I'll speak to HR. We'll restructure reporting lines. You can't report directly to me anymore. I don't want special treatment. You won't get it, she said firmly. If anything, they'll scrutinize you more. I can handle that. She studied me, as if checking whether I understood what I was offering. This will be messy, she said. People will talk. They already do, I replied. A faint smile touched her mouth. You're braver than you look. I'm just tired of pretending. She slipped her hand into mine. Not hidden. Not rushed. For the first time, standing in a bright hallway under fluorescent lights, it did not feel like secrecy. It felt like choice. We stood there a moment longer before separating. Tomorrow, she said, steady again. We start doing this the right way. I nodded. As I walked back toward the elevator, my heart was pounding, not from fear, but from clarity. For months, I had wondered whether I was just convenient. Just available. Just physical. Now I knew. I was risking everything because I loved her. And she had finally admitted she was risking it too. The hard part was just beginning. The HR meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. Claire insisted we sit side by side. I remember noticing small things. The hum of the overhead lights. The way the HR director avoided looking directly at us at first. The glass walls of the conference room, slightly fogged from the cold outside. Claire spoke first. I'm in a consensual relationship with a member of the analytics team, she said calmly. We're here to formalize reporting changes and ensure compliance. No hesitation. No apology. The director cleared her throat. You understand the optics? Yes, Claire replied. Which is why we're being transparent. I added, I've requested reassignment to report under the COO. That part had been my idea. I needed them to see I was not clinging to her authority. The paperwork took 30 minutes. Policy language. Disclosure forms. A formal change in reporting structure. When we left the room, it felt like stepping out into open air after months underground. For about 48 hours, nothing happened. Then the whispers started. At first subtle. Conversation stopping when I approached. 2 junior analysts looking at me, then quickly away. By Friday afternoon, it was no longer subtle. An anonymous email circulated internally. Someone forwarded it to me without comment. Promotion makes sense now. Must be nice to have after-hours access to the CEO. I stared at the screen for a long time. I told myself I was prepared for this. I was not. In the hallway later that day, I overheard 2 managers. She's old enough to know better. He's not stupid. He knows exactly what he's doing. I kept walking. That night, I did not go to her condo. I went home. My apartment felt smaller than usual. I sat at my kitchen table with the lights off, the city glow slipping through the blinds. My phone buzzed. Claire asterisk. You're quiet. I typed, deleted, typed again. Me asterisk. Maybe this was a mistake. The response came quickly. Come over. When she opened the door, she did not look like the CEO. She looked tired. "They've started, haven't they?" she asked. I nodded. She stepped aside so I could enter. "I told you this would happen," she said softly. "I can handle it," I replied, though my voice did not sound convinced. She watched me carefully. "Can you?" I ran a hand through my hair. "They think I used you. That none of my work matters. Your work does matter. But perception counts too." She moved closer, her hand resting on my chest, not seductive this time. Grounding. "They've questioned my competence for 20 years," she said. "My age. My decisions. My authority. If we walk away now, we're proving them right. I don't want to damage you," I said quietly. "You're not damaging me. I don't want to be the reason they push you out." She held my face between her hands. "If anyone pushes me out, it will not be because I chose to love someone." The word landed differently now. Not whispered. Stated. Still, doubt crept in. The following week was worse. Someone left a printed note on my desk. "Hope the view from the top was worth it." I crumpled it before anyone could see. Performance reviews suddenly felt sharper. Questions about my promotion were more pointed. I had to justify every decision with twice the data. One afternoon, the COO called me into his office. "You understand the scrutiny you're under?" he said evenly. "Yes." "Good. Then I'll perform it." "I will." And I did. I started coming in earlier, leaving later, triple-checking models, volunteering for difficult projects, presenting findings with clarity that left no room for doubt. Not to prove them wrong about us. To prove them wrong about me. Meanwhile, Claire faced her own battle. At a leadership dinner, someone joked about midlife reinvention. She did not laugh. Instead, she outlined the company's 5-year strategy so precisely that the table fell silent. I watched her from across the room, pride mixing with something protective. One night, after a particularly brutal week, I found her standing by her window again. Same spot as the first night. City lights below. "Are you tired?" I asked. "Exhausted." "Then why fight?" She turned to face me. "Because walking away would be easier," she said. "And I've never been interested in easy." I stepped closer. "They won't stop overnight," I said. "I know. Neither will I." For the first time in weeks, she smiled fully. We did not rush to her bedroom that night. We sat on the couch, legs tangled, talking quietly about strategy. About career paths. About how to outlast noise. The physical side of us was still there. Heat, closeness, the way her fingers traced slow patterns along my shoulder. But something deeper was forming. Partnership. By early spring, results began speaking louder than gossip. The analytics division I was leading posted the strongest quarter in company history. Client retention climbed. Revenue projections stabilized. In a company-wide meeting, the COO publicly acknowledged my team's work. No mention of Claire. No favoritism. Just numbers. Applause filled the room. I caught Claire's eye across the auditorium. She did not smile broadly. She just nodded once. Subtle. Proud. The whispers did not disappear completely. But they softened. Respect replaced speculation in small, gradual ways. One afternoon, the same investor who had questioned her months ago approached me after a presentation. "Strong analysis," he said stiffly. "Thank you?" He hesitated. "You've grown into the role." I knew what that meant. I did not mention her. That evening, I went to her condo not because she called, but because I wanted to share something. "They're starting to see it," I said. "I know," she replied. "They're starting to see you." We stood there, close but steady. The pushback had not broken us. If anything, it forced us to stand straighter. For the first time since the gossip began, I felt something settle inside me. Not just love. Confidence. We had chosen each other knowing the cost. And now, we were proving that neither of us had to shrink to make it work. We did not move in together right away. That surprised people. They expected drama. A reckless decision. Headlines inside the company. Instead, we kept building slowly. By early summer, the worst of the gossip had settled into background noise. My division had closed another strong quarter. Claire had secured a new investor who cared more about numbers than appearances. One Saturday morning in May, I was in her kitchen making coffee. She was at the island, barefoot, reading through a printed report. "Your place still looks like a rental," she said without looking up. "It is a rental. You know what I mean." I did. My apartment still felt temporary. Furniture I bought after the divorce. Walls mostly bare. No sense of permanence. She set the report down and looked at me. "How often are you actually there?" she asked. "Less lately." "That's not practical." I leaned against the counter. "Are you suggesting something?" "I'm suggesting we stop pretending we don't already live in two places." There was no grand speech. No sweeping gesture. Just practicality. "You're sure?" I asked. She held my gaze. "I don't do things halfway." 2 months later, my boxes were stacked near her floor-to-ceiling windows. Moving in felt quieter than I expected. No fireworks. No dramatic moment. Just folding my clothes into a drawer next to hers. Adding my toothbrush beside hers in the bathroom. The first night all my things were there, we sat on the couch in comfortable silence. "This feels different," I said. "Better or worse?" "Settled." She rested her head on my shoulder. "I haven't shared space with anyone in 15 years, she admitted. "I'm not good at compromise. I'm not good at chaos," I said. "That's why this works." Daily life together was not glamorous. We argued about thermostat settings. About where to store files. About whether Sunday mornings were for sleeping in or catching up on email. But there were small moments that felt bigger than any secret midnight call. Her leaving a note on the counter when she had an early flight. Me fixing a loose cabinet hinge without being asked. Her reaching for my hand automatically while we watched late-night news. We began attending events together. Carefully at first. Company functions where disclosure was already public. Then a charity dinner. Then a friend's birthday. There were looks, of course. But fewer whispers. At one dinner, someone asked bluntly, "Doesn't the age difference bother you?" Claire answered before I could. "Does competence have an age limit?" she asked calmly. The table laughed awkwardly. Later that night, in the car, she squeezed my hand. "You didn't need to defend me," I said. "I wasn't defending," she replied. "I was correcting." Professionally, we continued to grow. The analytics division expanded to 3 teams. I hired 2 managers under me. I was no longer Claire's promotion. I was just performing. She, meanwhile, negotiated a major acquisition. Watching her in those meetings was like watching someone who had finally stopped apologizing for existing. One evening, after a long week, we sat on the balcony overlooking the lake. The air was warm. City noise softened by distance. "I almost didn't let this happen," she said quietly. "I know. I was afraid you would lose yourself trying to protect me. I was afraid you would never let me matter." She looked at me then, steady. "You matter." The words felt solid. Not rushed. Not whispered in the dark. A month later I proposed. It was not elaborate. We were in the kitchen. Tuesday night. She was barefoot again, leaning against the counter while I chopped vegetables. "You ever think about making this official?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "Official how?" I set the knife down. My hands were shaking more than I expected. "Marry me." No kneeling. No audience. Just us. She stared at me for a long moment. "You're serious?" "I am." "You understand what that means?" "For both of us." "I do." She walked toward me slowly, studying my face as if searching for hesitation. "You're younger," she said quietly. "You could still walk away from this with fewer complications." "I don't want fewer complications," I replied. "I want you." Her breath hitched slightly. "For years," she said, "I convinced myself that wanting something personal was weakness. That needing someone would make me smaller." "Has it?" She shook her head. "You make me braver," she said. That was her yes. She did not scream. She did not cry loudly. She just wrapped her arms around me and held on. We stood there for a long time, the kitchen light humming above us. The next morning, she looked at me across the breakfast table and said, almost casually, "So, we're doing this." "We are." For the first time in a long while, there was no secrecy. No hiding. No half measures. Just 2 people who had fought through doubt, noise, and fear. and decided clearly to build something that did not apologize for existing. We got married on a Sunday in early October. Not in a ballroom. Not in a cathedral. On the rooftop terrace of her building. Just after 5 in the evening, when the sun started lowering over the lake and the city softened a little. There were maybe 40 people there. My sister flew in from Denver. A few close friends from my college days. Her longtime assistant, who had been with her since the early startup years. 2 board members who had quietly supported her when things were loudest. No press. No spectacle. Just chairs arranged in a simple semicircle. White flowers along the railing. The skyline behind us like it had always been part of the plan. I remember standing there, hands slightly cold despite the mild weather. I had faced investor panels without flinching. I had presented quarterly results to rooms full of skeptics. But waiting for her to walk out felt different. When she stepped onto the terrace, the room shifted the way it always did when she entered a space. Except this time, it wasn't authority people felt. It was joy. She wore a simple ivory dress. No heavy embellishments. Her hair down. The wind caught it lightly as she walked toward me. For a brief second, I saw the version of her from that first night. Standing by the window. Tired. Guarded. And then I saw who she had become since. Open. Certain. When she reached me, she smiled in a way that was just for me. The officiant spoke, but I barely registered the words. What I remember clearly were her vows. I spent years believing I had to be enough on my own, she said, her voice steady. I built walls to survive. I built success to protect myself. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that wanting more was weakness. She paused, looking directly at me. You showed me that being strong does not mean being alone. You showed me that partnership is not surrender. It is expansion. There was no dramatic trembling. Just honesty. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. I used to think being steady meant being forgettable, I said. That being dependable meant being background noise. You saw value in that. You saw me. I swallowed, not from nerves, but from the weight of it. I will stand beside you. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. In the boardroom. In the kitchen. In every room. A few people laughed softly at that. We exchanged rings without fumbling. That felt symbolic somehow. When we kissed, it was unhurried. Not performative. Just confirmation. Applause followed, warm and genuine. Later, during dinner, I noticed something. The same investor who had once questioned her leadership raised a glass. To resilience, he said. And to growth. It was not an apology. But it was acknowledgement. Throughout the evening, I watched her move through the crowd. Confident. Relaxed. No edge of defensiveness. At one point, she pulled me aside near the railing. Remember when you told me you were in love with me in the hallway? She asked. I remember thinking you were about to fire me. She laughed softly. I almost walked away that day, she admitted. I thought it would protect us both. And now? Now I'm glad I didn't choose safety. The city lights began to flicker on below us. I thought about the months of whispers. The anonymous emails. The sideways looks at company events. The way I had doubted myself. The way she had doubted letting anyone close. None of it disappeared magically. It just became part of the story. People who once said it would not last were eating cake 20 feet away. Not everyone had changed their minds. That was fine. We had not built this to convince them. As the night wound down, the rooftop emptied slowly. Chairs stacked. Music fading. She slipped her heels off and stood barefoot again, just like the night I first stepped into her condo. Mrs. Morgan, I said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. Careful, she replied. You know I outranked you. I laughed. Then she softened. We outranked out, she said. That line stayed with me. When the last guest left, we stood alone on the terrace. The wind cooler now. The city steady and bright below. We had not proven anyone wrong with speeches. We had done it with consistency. With showing up. With choosing each other in rooms that were not always kind. The wedding was not an ending. It felt like a quiet declaration. We were not hiding anymore. We were not apologizing anymore. We were simply building a life, in full view, together. We got married on a Sunday in early October. Not in a ballroom. Not in a cathedral. on the rooftop terrace of her building. Just after 5 in the evening, when the sun started lowering over the lake and the city softened a little. There were maybe 40 people there. My sister flew in from Denver. A few close friends from my college days. Her longtime assistant, who had been with her since the early startup years. 2 board members who had quietly supported her when things were loudest. No press. No spectacle. Just chairs arranged in a simple semicircle. White flowers along the railing. The skyline behind us like it had always been part of the plan. I remember standing there, hands slightly cold despite the mild weather. I had faced investor panels without flinching. I had presented quarterly results to rooms full of skeptics. But waiting for her to walk out felt different. When she stepped onto the terrace, the room shifted the way it always did when she entered a space. Except this time, it wasn't authority people felt. It was joy. She wore a simple ivory dress. No heavy embellishments. Her hair down. The wind caught it lightly as she walked toward me. For a brief second, I saw the version of her from that first night. Standing by the window. Tired. Guarded. And then I saw who she had become since. Open. Certain. When she reached me, she smiled in a way that was just for me. The officiant spoke, but I barely registered the words. What I remember clearly were her vows. I spent years believing I had to be enough on my own, she said, her voice steady. I built walls to survive. I built success to protect myself. And somewhere along the way, I convinced myself that wanting more was weakness. She paused, looking directly at me. You showed me that being strong does not mean being alone. You showed me that partnership is not surrender. It is expansion. There was no dramatic trembling. Just honesty. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. I used to think being steady meant being forgettable. I said. That being dependable meant being background noise. You saw value in that. You saw me. I swallowed, not from nerves, but from the weight of it. I will stand beside you. Not in front. Not behind. Beside. In the boardroom. In the kitchen. In every room. A few people laughed softly at that. We exchanged rings without fumbling. That felt symbolic somehow. When we kissed, it was unhurried. Not performative. Just confirmation. Applause followed, warm and genuine. Later, during dinner, I noticed something. The same investor who had once questioned her leadership raised a glass. To resilience, he said. And to growth. It was not an apology. But it was acknowledgement. Throughout the evening, I watched her move through the crowd. Confident. Relaxed. No edge of defensiveness. At one point, she pulled me aside near the railing. Remember when you told me you were in love with me in the hallway? She asked. I remember thinking you were about to fire me. She laughed softly. I almost walked away that day, she admitted. I thought it would protect us both. And now? Now I'm glad I didn't choose safety. The city lights began to flicker on below us. I thought about the months of whispers. The anonymous emails. The sideways looks at company events. The way I had doubted myself. The way she had doubted letting anyone close. None of it disappeared magically. It just became part of the story. People who once said it would not last were eating cake 20 feet away. Not everyone had changed their minds. That was fine. We had not built this to convince them. As the night wound down, the rooftop emptied slowly. Chairs stacked. Music fading. She slipped her heels off and stood barefoot again, just like the night I first stepped into her condo. Mrs. Morgan, I said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. Careful, she replied. You know I outranked you. I laughed. Then she softened. We outranked out, she said. That line stayed with me. When the last guest left, we stood alone on the terrace. The wind cooler now. The city steady and bright below. We had not proven anyone wrong with speeches. We had done it with consistency. With showing up. With choosing each other in rooms that were not always kind. The wedding was not an ending. It felt like a quiet declaration. We were not hiding anymore. We were not apologizing anymore. We were simply building a life, in full view, together.